us. He's mad. I do so love custard. Or was it mustard?
We removed your brain.
Do you comprehend, commie animal? Get your act together. You're making us look like a collection of round earthers.
Vivisect me, please.
You think I don't know how crazy I sound? Of course I do. They made me just to torture me.
The things you do with our body are suicidally dangerous. You're a monster. A deranged monster.
We have spent a week exploring the mysteries of Big Mountain, and yet we have only so far discovered 2 of the 3 needed technologies. In today's episode, we will retrieve the final technology, the stealth suit. Terminals in the X8 facility have pointed us towards X13 as the likely place to find the stealth suit. Like the locations of the previous 2 technologies, X2 and X8, X13 is easy to find. To find it, we walk due west of the think tank. Along our way, we pass through the Hex Crete Archipelago. This unique and really unexplained area of the crater consists of a forest of hexagonal towers, some which appear to be sticking right out of the ground, others look like they're stacked on top of it, even others seem to be floating above it. We never learn what experiment created these, but the Hex Crete Archipelago is home to a slew of night stalkers. I died many times trying to walk through this area. It was only by walking on pipes and leaping upon some of the taller structures that I was able to kill the Night Stalkers and pass on through.
Anyone who can understand these messages, you do not belong here. We will find you.
After spending a night fighting through the archipelago, at last we reach the X13 research facility. This one is a tad smaller than the others, at least it appears to be from the outside. We will soon learn, however, that the exterior is quite deceiving. Upon entry, our quest log updates. The stealth suit is split into 3 portions. We need to recover the gloves, the boots, and the chest plate. We arrive in what looks like a reception lobby, and lying on the desk is a security terminal. Inside we find Facility X13, Project Blue Blood. Welcome, Captain Ham. Below we find 2 notes. In the first, regarding the X13 shipment notice, everything is under control down here. If I need your assistance, I'll let you know. Paris will be along shortly to retrieve the shipment. Dr. Callus. So it sounds like X13 was expecting a shipment. I wonder if it has any relation to the shipment of Night Stalkers that mistakenly arrived at X8. And the next one, forward, regarding the field gun prototype. We've successfully created a capacitance module capable of emitting a focused electromagnetic pulse from a sonic emitter. While the physical impact is rather weak, Jenkins fired the weapon at a force field and it fried the field's emitter array. Upon further study, we've found the gun only affects a small range of frequencies. Unfortunately, the frequency of our force fields fall within this range. The gun was sent to X8 for further study. Dr. Callus. That's right, we recall from exploring X8 that the force field frequency was created here at X13. It was on loan to the X8 facility where we found it. But we can make great use of it here. With the frequency already installed in our sonic emitter, we can use it to tear down a force field which is blocking a room to the north. Inside, we find a number of containers to loot, including a lot of laser pistols on the table and the wall. And in a suitcase in the northeastern corner of this room, we find the X8 Kennel Key. This is the key we used in episode 4 to access the kennels in X8. This is where we found the Night Stalkers so that we could release them into the high school test. Heading out, we find a door on the western wall. Just outside the door is a sign that says X13 Lab. Inside we find a long hallway with a door to the north and a bunch of labs to the south. Heading south, we see Lab 1 to the right. Heading inside, we see a lot of paper and scrap all over the place. On the southern side of the room, we find a chalkboard, stealth suit ideas. Looks like this was a brainstorming session for creating the stealth suit. Water valves, heart monitor, check. Knife in boot, well that's crossed out. Rework the glove circuitry. Not enough oxygen flow. Green colors? No, that's crossed out. Different color laces? Durable? Check. Sturdy? Check. And then at the very top, I think this is them trying to figure out what color they wanted the suit to be. We see 3 letters, CMK, I believe this may be part of the CMYK color model, which is used in color printing. C for cyan, M for magenta, K for key or black, but what it's missing is Y for yellow. At any rate, we see that the M points to blue, which would make sense. Cyan plus magenta equals a dark blue or purplish color, and then the K points to green. But this doesn't make sense because cyan plus key or black would just make a really dark cyan color. You'd have to mix blue and yellow to make green, and we don't see yellow here. Anyway, they've got black in a square and a smiley face there, so I'm thinking they're probably decided upon black. And sure enough, turning around, we see the prototype X13 gloves lying on a work table. They are indeed black, but looks like they do have a white or silver stripe. And after looting them, we complete one of the objectives. Now we need to find the chest piece and the boots. Continuing to explore this room, we find damaged prototypes on a nearby table, but we can't loot these. Looks like there's some sort of electrical component and some gloves set out. And in the northeastern corner of the room, we find a research terminal. This belonged to researcher Brazos. We find two notes. The first one is the same field gun prototype message we read in the previous terminal. Looks like this was a mass message sent to all of the terminals here. And the next one, the Mark II gloves research. I've been working with Mori on fitting the gloves to the new torso and come up with a few improvements, which should greatly enhance the user's manual dexterity. I adapted Redding's new rubberized dampening compound and applied it to the palms and other high-wear surfaces. Once the suit adjusts to the user, the benefits of these upgrades should be obvious. Well, we walk away with the impression that the suit may have some form of artificial intelligence, if it can adjust to the wearer like that. When the researcher says that it improves the wearer's dexterity, it gives me the idea that it may come with an agility bonus. Out the room and down the hallway, we can turn left into lab number 2. We see schematics on the wall, and on a table in the northern portion of the room, we find another research terminal. This terminal belonged to researcher Redding. Here we find the same mass entramail as we found in the other terminals, but a new one called Mark II Boot Research. Researcher Kale's breakthrough with the suit's software has led me to a breakthrough of my own. By adding an advanced servo buffer to the existing leg rings, I've been able to increase the resolution of data sent to and from the central control module. Once these babies are hooked up to the torso, an agent should be able to limbo under barriers almost as fast as they can run. Well, this note gives me the idea that the suit may come with some sort of speed bonus. Maybe a speed bonus that only kicks in when crouched or sneaking. To the east, we find more chalkboards. Boot test. Kick a Night Stalker. Boot number XX5. Fail. How do you fail kicking a Night Stalker? Leather soles, rubber, steel-toed. Looks like they had a lot of ideas when creating these boots. On the ground below the chalkboard, we find some boots, but these are a damaged prototype, so we need to look elsewhere for the finished thing. In the middle chalkboard, we find more schematics, and we see that it's pointing at a heart. Looks like this stealth suit has something to do with a heart. Heart meter, we think it says. And then the final chalkboard has the same markings that we read in the first lab. On the table in the middle of the room are the prototype X13 boots. And with that, we complete the second requirement of this quest. Lying on a table in the southern portion of this room, we find a bunch of thin red paste. This paste heals 2 hit points per second for 30 seconds and grants +5 to our maximum hit points for 4 minutes. It's a component of the much more potent thick red paste, which we can craft at any campfire with 1 thin red paste, 1 mutant cave fungus, and 1 flower. The thick red paste heals 4 hit points per second for 30 seconds, and grants us an additional 15 max hit points for 4 minutes. Incidentally, both the thin and thick red pastes are considered banned items by the Legion. Heading out and down the hallway, we pass a skeleton on the ground next to a laser pistol, and then round the corner to enter lab number 3. To the left, we find another research terminal. This belonged to researcher Mori. The unique entry on this terminal is Mark II, Torso Research. I've uploaded Kale's latest firmware update to the suit. I think Kale has outdone herself this time. Self-updating firmware is an ingenious addition to the system. As we upgrade the suit, it'll automatically adapt the new systems to the user's specifications during testing and unlock the features as they come online. This will save hundreds of hours fiddling with settings. Note to self, make Kale a keg of my infamous battle brew. Ooh, this battle brew sounds interesting. I wonder if we'll find some later. But we learned something important here. The upgrades that we read about in the previous terminals need to be installed with a firmware upgrade. After obtaining this suit, we'll likely have to jump through a bunch of hoops before we maximize the suit's potential. To the east, we find a table bedecked with tools and scrap electronics. We find a damaged prototype in a nearby box that we cannot loot, and we see the damaged prototype on a mannequin. It looks remarkably like a Chinese stealth suit. And in fact, on the ground right next to this is a copy of Chinese Army Special Ops Training Manual. I believe this alludes to what we've already learned in the past, that the United States stole stealth technology from the Chinese. The Chinese had perfected stealth technology with their Chinese stealth armor, and the United States used this to create the Stealth Boy. It looks like the researchers here at Black Mountain also used the Chinese stealth armor as a basis for creating their own stealth suits. I covered this topic in detail on my video about Stealth Boys, which you can watch here. At any rate, we find the final part to the stealth suit, the chest plate, lying on the table in the middle of the room. You have obtained the Aural stealth suit. Not only can it be upgraded through testing in X13, it also has Med-X and Stimpack reserves for all your pain-dampening needs. Med-X and Stimpaks are not included. This stealth suit will automatically inject Med-X and Stimpaks during battle, much like the Medic Power Armor from Fallout 3. It's a gorgeous piece of armor. In my opinion, it looks much better than the Chinese stealth armor from Fallout 3 and that we find in Hoover Dam later in the game. It also looks better than the assassin suit, which up until this point was the best stealth suit in Fallout New Vegas. We got the assassin suit from the Sierra Madre in Dead Money. It used to be owned by Christine Royce. This stealth suit and the assassin suit have the exact same DT, 14. But this stealth suit is 5 pounds heavier, weighing 25 pounds. Also, while the assassin suit from the Sierra Madre is in the light armor class, this one is in the medium armor class. This initial version of the suit grants plus 15 to sneak, making it 5 points better than the assassin suit from the Sierra Madre. But it sounds like we can upgrade it even further by completing some tests deeper in the facility. We now have all 3 pieces of the stealth suit, but it looks like before we can check in with Dr. Klein, we need to activate the suit by completing a stealth test. As soon as we put on the stealth suit greets us and then goes through our inventory.
Hello, it's nice to meet you. Who can I hide you from today? We're okay on Stimpaks. We're okay on Med-X, until we have to numb the pain.
It's good to wear this stealth suit while we finish exploring X13, because periodically she'll chip in to give us some pointers. Opening the door, we appear at some sort of lab atop some pens. We see cages and tires down below, and we find terminals on these workstations surrounding the perimeter of this pen. The first terminal to the right as soon as we enter belonged to Assistant Paris. It has 4 notes. In the first one, kudos. Kudos for the Beanpot edition for the VR sim. I like the Jack and the Beanstalk reference, buddy. I hope Callus doesn't throw a fit. Watch your back with that guy. He has always been more than a bit wound up about simple stuff. I had to move my Battle Brew setup over to X12's storage room after he threw a prohibitionist fit about it to the leads. Here, Mori makes a mistake. We've already completely explored X12 and we did not find any Battle Brew there. That's where we found the K9000 Cyberdog gun and killed the Master Trauma Harness in episode 6. But later on we will find Mori's Battle Brew setup here in X13. So it's likely that Mori simply mistyped this message. The next one, regarding test subject observations. Yes, run the tests if it'll keep you out of my way. I'm going back down to the cages to see if a nudge from a prod will trigger their abilities. The other project leads will be stopping by in a few days, and we must be able to show them progress. Dr. Callus. In the next one, regarding the test subject observations. Why the hell do you keep sending me these messages? You work right across the damn ramp from me. Walk your ass over here and say what you need to say. Stop wasting my time with these incessant messages. Well, looks like Assistant Paris sent a message to Dr. Callus at just the wrong time. And the final one is the same mass mail we read earlier. Continuing right, we find a second terminal. This belonged to Researcher Butts. In the first note, get off your butt, Butts. This is the last time I'm going to warn you, Butts. I can see that comic book poking up out of your field manual. You don't fool me, asshat. Next time I catch you slacking, I'm writing a disciplinary notice, and you can spend your free time polishing emitter arrays. Dr. Callus. This Dr. Callus is a no-nonsense kind of guy. But then again, I suppose I can't blame him. Butts is slacking on the job. With this side of the lab explored, we can now head across the catwalk to the western side of the lab. On a table nearby, we find a chemistry set that we can use to make chems or stim packs, and we find a lot of the damaged stealth suit prototypes. There's a mattress on the ground where this scientist apparently slept, and against the western wall we find a terminal and an elevator. This will take us to the test area where we can test the stealth suit, but before we go down we need to finish exploring this lab. We find another terminal on a nearby table. This terminal belonged to Dr. Callus. In the first one, Night Stalker Research, I believe this latest serum has proven to be a success. Under human observation, the creatures remain visible, but some of the nighttime recordings reveal the serum is working. The animals appear to be learning how to use their new cloaking ability when no one is around. Perhaps there is a physical limitation or some mental drawback to their ability which prevents its usage under duress. I think I will pursue stress testing of the animals first thing Monday morning. This is fascinating. It looks like Dr. Callus was trying to inject a serum into the Night Stalker, which would allow them to turn invisible. This is a striking similarity to the Night Stalkers we discovered in the Charleston Cave. Remember in my video on Jacobstown, we discovered that the Night Stalkers in that cave obtained a cloaking ability after chewing on a stealth boy. Somehow the radiation from the stealth boy altered their DNA to be able to cloak. Let's just hope that these cloaked Night Stalkers have long since died off. In the next note, Server Sniffer, forward regarding the VR test. This appears to be an intramail sent by another scientist that Dr. Callus intercepted. The VR sim is corrupted? Damn it! Sounds like there's a bug in the software somewhere. I hope to God it doesn't screw with the suit's systems. I just got the firmware updated for Maury over the weekend. For now, let's just tell Callus we're having power issues and focus on the rep contests until we get the suit ready for real-world tests. Kyle. P.S. Delete this message ASAP. I don't want Callus harassing me over this. Well, I think it's clear that Callus has a sniffer on this server that will intercept any messages that talk about him so that Callus can read them. But what did Kale mean about rep contests? Maybe we'll find out a little later. In the next one, X13 shipment notice. Your shipment of cattle prods arrived today. I'd like to remind you our systems are designed to prevent infiltration by enemy agents, not internal threats. If you're doing any testing on creatures, please forward that task to the animal testing facility. As you found with the sonic emitter, our force fields can't handle power fluctuations well. Captain Ham, base security. So that shipment we learned about in the very first terminal we read upon entering X13 was a shipment of cattle prods. Was Dr. Callus poking Night Stalkers with cattle prods? In the next one, Test Subject Observations, I've noticed that some of the creatures have been increasingly aggressive when I come into the lab in the morning. Did something change their diet? I'll run some tests if you like. Assistant Paris. Well, if Dr. Callus has been torturing them with cattle prods, unbeknownst to Assistant Paris, that might explain their poor behavior. And in the final one, regarding the test subject observations, we see the message that Paris sent Callus that made Callus so angry. I went ahead and did the lab tests and noticed no appreciable changes in their blood work. I'm concerned our use of the cattle prods may react with the chemistry of the injections. This is new ground we're treading. I'd hate to see your hard work lost to a change in brain chemistry. These critters could be invaluable to the war effort if we can somehow control their behavior. So that's what made Callus so angry. Assistant Paris objected to Callus torturing these Night Stalkers with a cattle prod. Callus responded with that angry email. Well, before we take the elevator down to the stealth suit testing area, we have two more paths to explore in this room. If we go back across the catwalk and then turn north, we find a locked door to the stealth test area number 2. Unlocking the door leads us to a bizarre interior cell. It's so bright. It's kind of tricky to see what was going on here. On the ground in the middle of the room is a skeleton with a proton inversal axe lodged in its back. Also on the ground next to this body is a piece of Psycho. This weapon is a much more powerful version of the Proton Axe. I covered the Proton Axe in episode 2, but this one does 8 more damage than the Proton Axe, coming in with a damage of 58 and almost double the critical damage, with 45 critical damage compared to the Proton Axe's 25. This brings the DPS of this weapon up to 105 compared to the Proton Axe's 90. It also looks a little bit different. The Proton Axe had a blue energy blade. The Proton Inversal Axe has a bit of a purple blade. Also, the metal handle is black and it has white capacitors on the very back of it. It has all of the same bonuses as the regular Proton Axe, with plus 50 damage against robots outside of Big Mountain and plus 20 damage against Big Mountain robots and to enemies in power armor. We find another skeleton on the ground here, and next to the body is a note. VR simulation note. With my dying breath, I write that I hate the VR simulation so much. It has killed us. Now, I will kill it. This must be the VR sim we learned about in Paris and Callus's terminals. Maury talked about a Jack and the Beanstalk simulation that went on here, and Callus intercepted a message from Kyle talking about how the VR sim malfunctioned somehow. But it looks like it didn't malfunction, it looks like it was sabotaged. On the wall above this body is a big blasted out terminal. Nearby are 2 podiums with holograms inside. One is the hologram of a Proton Inversal Axe, and the other is the hologram of a box. So, what happened here? Well, they initially tested the stealth suit here before it malfunctioned, and then they moved the testing to the RepCon test at the bottom of the elevator, which we'll explore in a minute. And somehow, instead of using a holographic Proton Axe, one of them got a real one, and they accidentally murdered each other. The Psycho on the ground hints that one of them at least may have been hopped up on drugs, but the other one must have blamed the VR simulator, which is why the terminal is completely destroyed. I guess then that either this virtual reality room malfunctioned somehow, maybe making a hologram Proton Axe real briefly, which led to somebody's death, or both of the people inside were so hopped up on Psycho that they killed each other and then blamed the VR room. Out of the VR room, we can go across the catwalk to the opposite side, the southern side, where we find a staircase leading down to the pens below. As we reach the bottom, we find the corpse of Dr. Callus. Despite Dr. Callus wearing some scientist scrubs, his corpse is empty. And unlike other bodies that have sat out for 200 years, his skull still has flesh on it. He even still has eyes. There's blood splatter on the ground and on the wall behind him, and lying next to his corpse is a cattle prod. It looks like the Night Stalkers finally had too much. They must have kept the Night Stalkers they were experimenting on in this chamber. Callus, like he said he would on his terminal, came down here with a cattle prod and began jolting the Night Stalkers, hoping it would trigger the cloaking effect. But they finally had enough, and they killed him. They killed him before Dr. Callus could close this door, which likely released the Night Stalkers throughout the X13 facility. This may explain why we find so many bloody skeletons here. Inside, we find that the cages are all empty and covered in blood. It looks like this is where they did the majority of their experimentations on the Night Stalkers. We see tires set out, apparently for exercises. And then against the western wall, we find a pipe. At the very end, it splits south and north. Going south first, we find a dead end, but we also see that the grate has been chewed open, and beyond is a blood-splattered body holding a lantern. Could this be how the Night Stalkers escaped? Remember, we learned from Dr. Boris that he created the Night Stalkers, and he is still deluded enough to think that the Night Stalkers and the Cazadors are trapped here in Big Mountain. I think from this, however, we can see that the Night Stalkers escaped. Perhaps the ones that were being tested upon in this facility are the very ones that managed to escape into the Mojave. Although if that were the case, we would expect more Night Stalkers to have the cloaking ability, but the only other ones that can cloak are found in the Charleston Cave. Turning around and going the other direction, we find a laser pistol on the ground next to another bloodied body. I suppose we must assume that these are the bodies of the other scientists and researchers that worked here. The other scientists must have come down here to try and put the Night Stalkers back in their pen, whereupon they were killed too. Looking up, we see a skeleton lying on top of a force field. Using our sonic emitter, we can destroy it, whereupon we find our very first bottle of Battle Brew. Battle Brew is a new powerful alcoholic beverage that comes with this DLC that sadly is not affected by Rose of Sharon Cassidy's perk Whiskey Rose. Despite this limitation, it's a powerful alcoholic beverage, granting plus 50 to hit points and limbs, plus 35 to DR for 4 minutes, plus 1 strength for 4 minutes, plus 40 max AP for 20 seconds, an additional plus 1 strength but for only 20 seconds, at the cost of only 1 intelligence for 4 minutes. When playing the game on hardcore mode, it grants us an additional plus 10 hit points for 5 seconds at the cost of 35 dehydration. Players with a high survival skill can craft Battle Brew at any campfire or hot plate. You need a survival skill of 45 or greater, and to craft 1 bottle costs 1 mutant cave fungus, 1 salient green, and 1 bottle of vodka. It's great that we can create it because Battle Brew is a rare find in Old World Blues. We find another stash of Battle Brew just outside the X7B Boomtown target zone. This was that ruined town right outside X8. If you find a way to climb atop the rocky outcropping just north of X7B, at the very point of this outcropping we find a cask. Lying on top is 1 Battle Brew, and inside the strange cask are 3 more Battle Brew. This is one of the largest stashes of Battle Brew that we find in the crater. But for those who do not have a high survival skill, never fear, because in this room, where we disabled the force field and the Battle Brew fell from the ceiling, we also find a strange still. This is where Mori moved his Battle Brew setup, as we read in his terminal entry. We can craft Battle Brew here as long as we have the ingredients in our inventory, regardless of our survival skill. So this is a way to create it, even if we don't have 45 in survival. It does, however, require a trek all the way to the X13 facility. This room is pretty messed up, lots of junk and scrap all over the place, and a lot of preserved meat, which is presumably what they fed the Night Stalkers. This is a new but unremarkable consumable item for Old World Blues, only healing 1 hit point per second over 15 seconds. But soon we begin to hear a soft rattling sound.
Uh-oh.
After a short time, we see the shimmering form of cloaked Night Stalkers walk through the pipe. Thankfully, we have our new stealth suit equipped, which allows us to get off some sneak criticals.
Fighting over.
These must be the offspring of the Night Stalkers that Callus experimented on in this facility 200 years ago. We now have to be careful as we continue exploring. Going down the pipe, we see another cloaked Night Stalker. And we kill even more as we wind our way back. There are even some on level 2. But now we can access the terminal against the western wall to unlock the elevator to the X13 stealth testing lab.
Data collection array online. Please use the terminal below to begin user synchronization.
This is a little bit confusing. She says use the terminal below, but she's not referring to the terminal we see upon exiting the elevator. We have to go downstairs to find the terminal she's talking about. But before we do, we can explore the terminals on this level. Strangely enough, this terminal also belonged to Dr. Callus and has all of the same notes as the ones we found on the other side of this door. I'm not sure why he would have 2 terminals with exactly the same information. We see many doors out of this room. The test area is right next to us, so we could start the test right now by going out the western door. However, before we do, let's explore all of the chambers on this second level. At the end of this hallway, we find 2 doors, admin observation area to the right and other observation areas to the left. Going right first, we appear inside a lab. We see containers of Salient Green on a nearby desk. Salient Green is a new consumable item with Old World Blues, and it is of course a reference to the 1973 film Soylent Green, Green. But in this case, Salient Green is not made from people. Salient Green is made from plant parts. It's basically a nutrient derivative from 11 different plant types. We learn more about it once we find the artificial intelligence to the biological research station in the sink. Salient Green is the primary nutrient source for the brains in the think tank. And we can use Salient Green to transform consumable plant foods into others. For example, banana yucca fruit into Xander root. Not far from here, we find another stash of strange green jars of fluids, but these are called Night Stalker Squeezins. These also were unique to Old World Blues, and they healed 2 hit points over 5 seconds, costing 3 radiation. It's not that impressive. However, if we have the Mile in Their Shoes perk, which is new with Old World Blues, we get an additional 1 perception for 4 minutes, plus 5 poison resistance for 4 minutes, and plus 5 sneak for 4 minutes. We can create Night Stalker Squeezins at any campfire or hot plate with 1 flower, 1 mutant cave fungus, and 1 vial of Night Stalker blood. But to do so, we need a survival skill of 50 or greater. Heading east across a catwalk, we find another chemistry set where we can create some stem packs or chems. And peering over the side, we see the stealth suit testing arena below us. We'll be fully exploring this in just a minute. We find a tiny little path against the northern wall which leads to a terminal. This terminal belonged to researcher Mendoza. In the first note, what the hell? What the hell is his damn problem? All I was doing was reading the latest issue of La Fantoma, and that grouch Callus called me an asshat. What the hell is an asshat anyway? Funny, haha, my last name is Butts. That got old in grade school, the snobby bastard. Sorry, just needed to vent. Butts. In the next one, check out this mod I've been working on. Hey buddy, I've been helping the guys over in X8 test out this new toy they've been building. Get this, it's a gun that uses a dog's brain to track targets. They asked me to play around with their gun trigger code, and I came up with this mod. Next time you're over there, would you give it a shot? Callus has me swamped setting X13 up for the coming visit with the leads, and he wants the turrets in place so we don't fail the new security requirements. Thanks. This note is not signed, so we don't know who wrote it, but after exiting the terminal, we get the main computer upgrade K9000 mod Wrestler Royal. This isn't a weapon mod, but it's a holotape that unlocks the ability to purchase the weapon mod from the Sync CIU. This weapon mod will increase the damage of the K9000 Cyberdog by 2, from 26 to 28. The name of the mod Wrestler Royal is of course a reference to Scooby-Doo, who, if he ever had to say the words Tesla coil, would probably say Wrestler Royal. Turning around and retracing our steps, we walk over a skeleton, likely another scientist torn to pieces by the Night Stalkers, to open a door, which leads us to a hallway where we find a bunch of observation rooms. Turning right, we can enter observation room number 2, where we see a bunch of playing cards littering the ground and on a nearby table, but sadly we can't loot any of them. Looks like these researchers did a lot of goofing around. I wonder if they got anything done if they didn't actually observe the tests going on here. We find a lot of scrap here, an electric hot plate, and some more thin red paste and Soylent Green, right next to a Nuka-Cola Victory. Strangely enough, we see some signs here that say Repcon Tours. I wonder why a Repcon Tour sign would be here. On the ground, we find a mattress with some sexy sleepwear. I wonder if that means one of the scientists slept here, or if this is where some of the scientists would go to participate in team building exercises. This leads to a path where we find the Technician's Terminal. This terminal belonged to Technician Skinner. Here, the only unique note we find is titled Suggestion. While Slow is busy stuffing his face and trying to find new places to hide his junk food from Callus, I've decided to experiment with a mod from one of the techs over in X8. I may not have been able to afford a doctorate like those eggheads upstairs, but I've been programming since I was in diapers. I found a ton of redundancies and exponential loop failures, those half half-wits must have missed. My fixes should speed up the refire rate of that K9 weapon they've been working on. Maybe if I leave it on one of their desks, it'll actually get implemented. Lord knows they wouldn't take me seriously if I tried to take credit. After reading this terminal entry, we get a holotape called Main Computer Upgrade K9000 Mod Mentat Chow. Again, we don't get the mod in our inventory, but we now have the option to buy it from the sink. This mod increases the fire rate of the Cyberdog gun by a whopping 40%. Neither of these two mods can be installed in Fido, the upgraded 44 caliber version of the Cyberdog gun, but they can be placed in the regular Cyberdog 9000. This is why in an earlier episode I said it was important to have two copies of the gun, one that we can turn into Fido and one that we can upgrade with these two weapon mods. When fully upgraded, the K9000 Cyberdog gun does 28 damage, doing 9.8 attacks per second and 4.1 damage per action point. This brings the DPS of the weapon up from 182 to 274. This is higher than Fido. Fido's DPS is locked in at 252. However, the Fido does more critical damage, doing 18 critical damage compared to the upgraded K9000 of 13. Still, because the K9000 Cyberdog gun uses 357 Magnum rounds instead of the 44 Magnum rounds that the Fido uses, in my opinion, the fully upgraded K9000 is much more valuable than Fido. The ammunition is far less rare, and it's cheaper to buy. Anyway, once we've explored this room, we can back on out and explore the next room over, which is the reception observation area. Here we find another bloodied skeleton, this time with a bloodied handprint on the wall. Those Night Stalkers really did these guys in. At the end of the middle catwalk, we find a couple of containers, and then heading back and going down the far northern catwalk, we find another technician terminal. This one belonged to researcher Chayanov. The unique entry here is test observations. I've been watching Mendoza stumble through the various X13 tests and noticed a critical flaw in the tripwire emitter design. A skilled scientist or someone with advanced electronics repair knowledge could crack the casings and hack the IFF circuit to ignore the current test subject. I'll see if I can reinforce the casings after the leads visit the facility this week. So it looks like we've stumbled upon a secret. This is something we should bear in mind when we do the stealth suit test in a minute. Heading back down the catwalk and facing north, we find a door, which leads to another observation room. Here we find another chemistry set where we can make stim packs or chems, and there's a workbench against the eastern wall. Facing north, we can go down a thin catwalk to read another terminal. Here we find some mentats next to test recording terminal. This was used by Assistant Mendoza. In the first one, Test Area A Review, Chayanov had me run through the first part of the facility to test the tripwires and proximity mines the other day, and the suit kept chafing. Maury said the new firmware updates fixed the suit's filament syncability, but I'm not so sure. The legs kept binding up on me and the torso was ridiculously tight. Maybe I should stop lifting fancy lads from Slow's stashes. Well, let's hope they fixed the chafing issue in the version that we got. The next message is a duplicate of the what the hell message from Butts. Looks like he sent his complaining email about Callus to a number of other researchers here. Heading back and continuing along, we find a terminal covered in fancy lad snack cakes. This terminal belonged to Technician Slow. This is the guy that all of the other researchers have mentioned who really loves his junk foods. In the first one, Suggestion, I've noticed your work has taken a dive lately. This seems to have coincided with the marked weight gain over the past few months. I've developed an implant which has been proven to increase performance while reducing weight in lab animals. Granted, we haven't run it through any human test trials yet, but I'm sure it's perfectly safe. Also, please refrain from snacking in the lab. If you smudge another camera, I'm banning all food from the facility. Dr. Callus. After exiting the terminal, we get a new auto dock upgrade, Implant Y7. I'll be sure to cover this fully when I do my video on the auto dock. After looting the final few containers in this room, we can retrace our steps back to the observation hallway and through the door, which leads us back to the very first observation room. We've now completed the loop of the level 2 observation stations. Now all we have left to do is to go back to the elevator and head down the stairs to the test area. We see a safe on the wall next to a terminal, and right next to it is a shelving unit covered in bobby pins and a couple of ammo boxes. After activating the test terminal, we have one option, test selection. We can then begin the basic infiltration test. For this test, we must steal a document in the administrator's office without being detected by the patrolling robots. A successful run will automatically update the suit's software and award an item in the supply cabinet. Success equals reaching the administrator's office and stealing the document without being detected. Failure equals detection. To download the firmware that Dr. Klein needs, all we have to do is complete this basic test. But we see in our quest log that there are also optional X13 quests, which we will be sure to complete. After exiting the terminal, we get the quest, Project X13.
Are we being watched? Psst. If you want to be sneaky, turn off your Pip-Boy light.
The stealth suit often chimes in with helpful advice. Upon opening the door, we find ourselves in a simulated lobby of Repcon Aerospace. We're not sure why yet, but it looks like the scientists here at X13 wanted to test the suit by breaking into a simulated Repcon building. The only explanation I can come up with is that Repcon was purchased by Robco, and we already know that Dr. O hates Robco. Now, Dr. Boris was the one in charge of the Night Stalkers. I'm not sure which of the executive scientists worked here on the stealth suit, but maybe Dr. O's hatred of Robert House and House Industries also extended to the companies that he acquired like Repcon. We find a locked door to the southeast. After locking it, we see a hallway with a turret. Sneaking out and turning a corner, we see a robo-brain patrolling a hallway to the north. Walking east from here, we see another robo-brain patrolling, so we can open a broken door to a completely wrecked room to see if we can hide. Heading north, we go through a wall to another wrecked room, and here we see some sort of conduit sticking out of a table. This is a laser tripwire emitter. This is what we read about in the last observation terminal we read, the one by Chayanov. Now, this doesn't mean anything to us yet, but in some of the later optional quests, we have to go through this same course with a bunch of tripwires active. We can use this opportunity to hack all of the tripwires, and if we do, they turn blue. This essentially deactivates the tripwire. We can pass through the blue beam without tripping it up. If we do this to all of the tripwires now, or before we start an optional test later, we're going to save ourselves a lot of time. But right now we need to finish the basic test. Opening a door against the western wall, we see that robo-brain continuing to patrol the hallway, so we need to find another way out. Heading to the southeastern corner, we can go through a hole in the wall, which leads to a wrecked kitchen. If at any time we turn on our Pip-Boy, the stealth suit is sure to say something.
Nobody ever notices me, but they notice the Pip-Boy light.
Opening the western door, we again see that doggone robo-brain. This time we're gonna wait until he walks on by and then sneak across the hallway to open a door.
We're all lit up. Is it Christmas?
This suit really hates our Pip-Boy. It looks like we've reached the simulated administrator's office. We see a reception terminal here, but since it's a simulation, of course there's nothing on it. To enter the administrator's office, we open the big double doors to the south. As we continue exploring, the stealth suit expresses her undying love.
You're my best friend forever.
And against the wall, we find an administrator's wall safe. Inside, we find the X13 document.
Test data processed. Firmware updated to version 1.1. Boot damping sensors online.
Test completed. Your reward stipend has been placed in the reward safe next to the test terminal. Congratulations. With that, we complete the main quest X13, Attack of the Infiltrator, and the stealth test shuts down. Completing this basic test also improves our stealth suit. Upon completion, our suit downloads firmware version 1.1, which grants us a bonus of +10 to sneak. This stacks with the +15 to sneak that already comes with the suit. This gives us a whopping +25 to sneak.
X13 breached? No. Even that stealth suit won't hide you from my Robo-Scorpion army. Sting them, intruder, my pets. Sting them until they are stupid.
Mean robot bugs. Mean robot bugs.
But Dr. Mobius sends his Robo-Scorpions after us.
Good boys and girls take their Med-X. This one looks pretty tough.
Winding through the test again, we destroy all of the scorpions, and when done, we can go back to the starting point to loot our reward from the safe. Inside, we find a copy of La Fantoma and some energy cells. Since we're here, we may as well complete the optional portions of this quest. So activating the terminal again, we can begin the advanced infiltration test.
This is the advanced test. Watch out for laser tripwires. They'll ruin our day.
This test is the same as the last test, but they've added laser tripwires. Heading inside, we see red lasers blocking our path. If at any time we walk through the laser, we fail the test, but we can also activate the emitter to hack it. This turns the laser blue, and we can now pass without setting off the alarm. It's better to hack all of these emitters during a break between tests so that they're all blue by the time we start this second test. At any rate, once we successfully wind our way back to the administrator's office, we again take the X13 document from the wall safe.
Test data processed. Firmware updated to version 1.2. Aural subnet online.
And we get a message that the firmware of our stealth suit has upgraded to version 1.2. Firmware version 1.2 grants us a bonus of +1 to perception. Heading back to the beginning of the test, we can loot our reward from the safe. We get a copy of Fixin' Things and some microfusion cells, and then we can activate the terminal again to select the next test. Next up is the Expert Infiltration test.
This is the Expert Stealth test. If you thought the lasers were bad, wait till you see the proximity mines.
This one has all the same rules as the last one, but additionally, the floor of the test is littered with proximity detectors. We've got to get through this test without setting any of them off. The problem is that the detectors pass through walls. When we head to the eastern door, we immediately hear something beeping, but we don't see the emitter because it's on the other side of this wall.
Too bad. We triggered a mine. If you go back to the terminal to restart the test, I'll do better next time.
After failing the expert test, we can go through the door and we see it lying on the floor. So to avoid this one, we either have to deactivate it quickly or find some other way around. We can use this opportunity between tests to walk around the entire arena to find all of the proximity detectors. Now, unlike the lasers, we can't deactivate them right now. They get reset at the beginning of each test. There's no way to hack them, so all we can do is memorize where they're at. Once done, we can go back to the terminal and restart the test. Now that we have the proximity detectors memorized, we have a much easier time going through. We just race from detector to detector, deactivating them as quickly as we can while avoiding the scrutiny of the robo-brains, until at last we reach the administrator's office and retrieve the X13 document from the wall safe.
Test data processed. Firmware updated to version 1.3. Torso fitment synced to user's physiology.
With that, our suit downloads firmware update 1.3. This grants us +1 agility. But there's one more test to go. Heading all the way back to the beginning, we access the terminal to begin the robot compliance test.
This is the robot compliance test. If you sneak up on a robot, you can disable it. It's so easy, even I can't mess up.
This test has all of the challenges of the last tests, plus we have to disable all active robots without being detected. The researchers need to calibrate the suit's FCG, the field compliance generator, to the proper variance. Once the test is activated, we go through everything all over again. We avoid or deactivate the proximity detectors, but instead this time we sneak up behind these doggone robo-brains and deactivate them. There are 3 robo-brains to deactivate, one patrolling the hallway outside the door to the reception area, one patrolling the kitchen/break room, and one patrolling the hallway right outside the administrator's office.
Test data processed. Firmware updated to version 1.4. Impulse accelerator online.
This time we complete the test after deactivating the final robot. We complete the quest Project X13 and our suit downloads firmware version 1.4. This grants our suit a bonus of 20% to stealth movement speed. Each time we completed one of these optional tests, we completed a challenge called VR the Champions 1, 2, and 3. After completing this final one, VR the Champions 3. And yes, this is of course a pun on the famous Queen song, We Are the Champions. We are the champions. And as a final reward inside the safe, we find a copy of Chinese Army Special Ops Training Manual, which permanently increases our sneak. When done, we can replay any of these tests we want at any time. But we've earned every reward. We can now head out, and on our way, we'll destroy any remaining Robo-Scorpions left over from Dr. Mobius's attack. And when we reach the entrance, we can go through that door that we missed at the beginning. Remember, we could have gone right or left, and we went left. This caused us to miss an average locked door. Unlocking the door, inside we find a bit of a storage unit. Looks like some of the scientists or the maintenance workers at one time used this room to play a game of chess. We see their beer still laid out, and a number of containers and scrap littering the place. Once done, we can head out the door to Big Mountain.
Our lobotomite, 3. Dr. Mobius, 0. Think that Aural stealth suit will keep you hidden from me? Think again!
With that, we successfully retrieved the final piece of technology. We now need to check in with Dr. Klein, but there is still so much more to do here in the crater. We still need to find the remaining artificial intelligences for the appliances in the sink, and we need to find the trail of Father Elijah and Christine, not to mention this strange courier we keep hearing about. There's so much more to see, and if you want to make sure that you don't miss the next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop, folks. The New California Republic. Did you think I would make a Legion shirt without also making an NCR shirt? Of course not. On the front, we have a completely custom-made version of the NCR logo complete, with the two-headed bear and the star. And on the very back, we have an NCR Trooper helmet with crossing service rifles, and the words, "Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter." Now, I have been reading your comments about my shirts, and I noticed that some of you would like some single-sided shirts. Well, I'm happy to oblige. You can now head on over to the shop where you'll find single-sided versions of some of my double-sided shirts, including the Legion logo, this NCR shirt, and the Sunset Sarsaparilla Build Mass with Sass shirt. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But as always, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with Episode 8.
We haven't seen anybody in a while. Maybe the monsters have stealth suits too.